just want to thank you guys for having me. My name is Saul David. I've been a part of the Temple family for about 6 years. I've got two little ones, my wife and I. We started out in West Campus, and so we have been sort of grafted into the DNA of the mission and the vision of Temple. So I'm excited about being here, not just for the opportunity to share some of our experiences, but to really impart into what we feel like is our extended family. So I'm sure you guys are thrilled about not being in class, just like I'm thrilled about not being in the office. And so I will do my best to make sure this is not a waste of anybody's time. So if you guys see me on my phone here, it's not because I'm texting somebody. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm mindful of my time up here and what we're doing. So for those of you that may not know, like Pastor said, my wife and I have been entrepreneurs for about 12 years. So we have a logistics company that we run, and we also have a business incubator out of Keller. But I want to rewind back a little bit and talk about how that happened and sort of the journey, and hopefully there's some nuggets along the way that can help you guys in figuring out what direction you want to go. So what we'll do is we'll just kind of to run through the slides, and I want to run back here. Let me ask you guys, you have a youth camp, right, through the Temple? How many of you guys, by show of hands, have been to youth camp? Temple or church camp? What would you say is the common theme when you come back from church camp? Right? Everybody's usually on fire and excited, for God, and everyone is pumped up. Well, I went when I went to Castleberry, and church camp was a big part of our youth group, and we went, and I remember coming back and feeling super excited about the experience that I had and being, on fire for God. And they said, what we're going to do is Sunday, we're going to get all the kids lined up, and you're going to get up here and tell the church about your experience and what you want to do, what you got from the camp. And so I was really excited, but I was at the end of the line. And so I'm rehearsing in my head what I'm going to say, and the first girl that comes up, she starts talking about she had this amazing experience and that how God called her to be a missionary. Everybody stands up, and she gets a big standing ovation, and she walks off stage, and the other guy comes up, to a buddy of mine, and he says that he had a great experience and that God called him to be a pastor. Same thing. Everybody gets up, and a big round of applause, and he walks off. And this goes on for like half the kids in our class. I'm called to be in missions. I'm called to be with the youth. I'm called to be in the praise and worship team. And for me, I was 14 or 15. I didn't get that beeline call from God that was the direction for my life. And so my excitement quickly turned into a feeling of inadequacy. And there was a measure of, I felt like I missed the boat or something. Like I'm at the same camp they're at. I heard the same sermons they heard. Why did God tell them that they're called and I'm not called? And so I just remember feeling this huge emotional swing back and forth, and it was really difficult for me to get up there. And I remember being at a real loss for words when I was addressing the church about what happened. And the truth was that my mindset and what I had, because of growing up in church, I had a belief system about what that meant to be called to do something. Right? So you guys were off Monday for Columbus Day, right? And you guys know what his whole big thing was, that everyone thought the world was flat until he sailed it, and then they discovered it was round. Well, the world had always been round. But what happened is like a paradigm shift took place, and when people's ideology of a belief they've had for a long time was broken, but it wasn't that the world was flat and it became round, it was always round. And so in my world, growing up in church, to be called meant you were going to be a pastor. You were going to be on the praise and worship team. You were going to help out with the kids. You were going to work in the nursery. I mean, there were specific offices that you had if you were called into the ministry. And so I just want to point that out, that's something that I want to kind of debunk before we even get started about how God can use you. So that belief system for calling, it says that it's a strong urge towards a particular way of life or a career. And I think a lot of times when we're in church and we're in ministry, we think that they're always interlocked. And for some people it is, but for the vast majority it's not. It also says it's a strong inner impulse towards a particular course of action, especially when accompanied by the conviction of a divine influence. So God is involved in the guidance of your life. Just because your Monday through Friday doesn't put you in the four walls of a church doesn't mean that you weren't called to do something. And when that paradigm shift took place in my mind, it was very easy for me to be open to the idea that God may have different plans for my life, because I always, since I was a kid, felt like I wanted to have my own business. I didn't really know what it was. I started doing, cutting grass and washing cars and whatever I could do to make my own money. And so I felt like that's what I wanted to do, but then I was always battling kind of my inner spirit, because I felt like, well, that's not really a calling. That's a very selfish desire to want to be a businessman or be an entrepreneur. And so I really struggled with that until I really made peace with the idea that God has different plans for everybody, and we all have a calling. It's just in different places. Mine just happened to be in business. So Ephesians 4:1-7, it says that I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called. Worthy to walk in the calling to which you've been called. So whether you're a plumber or a roofer or a lawyer or a doctor, it's talking about your lifestyle, how you live it, being worthy to whatever God called you to. So when you're looking at what direction that you want to go, and I don't think many people at your age know exactly what they want to do, and that's okay. But just know that whatever you're doing, that the core principles, the makeup of your character is what's going to be important, because it's not what you do, it's how you do it that really allows your lifestyle to minister to people. And so as we're going through that was a big hurdle that I had to overcome of how I looked at things. Because to me, it was the position. Well, this person is a pastor. This person is an apostle. They've got a special beeline to God that I don't have, like the bat phone or something, that they can have communication with God that I can't have. And there's a special room that they go in to pray in that we don't have at our house. It's just crazy stuff like that. And the truth is, it's not the title. Like, people don't follow titles. And that's no different from ministry to corporate America. It's not the title that people care about. It's the character in which you carry yourself in and how you do it. So you could call yourself a pastor, but if you don't walk the walk, if you don't talk the talk, if the lifestyle is not in you, you're not going to be effective and you won't be able to minister to anybody. But you could be a plumber and you could walk the walk and talk the talk, and people can see that you pray and the language that you use and your attendance in church and your involvement in the community, and just letting the love of God shine through your personality, that will be more effective than the title that you hold in life. So as you're looking at your occupation and where you want to go in life, just keep that in mind. Don't get caught up in what you're doing. It's way more important about how you do it. So Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. And so for me, I just thought that meant just work hard. But it's not really the idea of working hard. It's anyone who's successful will tell you that the reason why they work hard is the fuel that keeps them going. Their why. What's your why? Why do you do this? Well, I've got 2 kids and a wife. That's why I get up in the morning, and I want to provide for them, and I want to give them a house to live in and food to eat, and I want them to be able to go to a nice school. And so all that requires resource, and so that's my why for why I work. But what God's saying here is that whatever you do, do it to Him. If you make God your why, it won't matter what you do. It won't matter whether you're a pastor or you're a plumber or a roofer or a lawyer. If God is your why, then that should be enough for you to want to do well at what you do. So, a big push for me was I liked making money. I liked having my own money. Growing up, we didn't have a whole lot of it, and so I made it a point to myself early on that was not going to be the life that I lived for the rest of my life. And so I was doing anything and everything I could to make money. And so then that was the next struggle early on as an adult was, is it wrong for me to want to make money? Well, Deuteronomy 8:18 says that God gives us the ability to create wealth. And I like that word because wealth is different than money. Like, I've got some money in my pocket, but like Bill Gates has wealth. There's a huge difference. And there's nothing wrong with it. And it says here that God gives us that ability, and He wouldn't give it to you if He didn't expect you to use it. So, I want to, in 1 Timothy it says that for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And this is where I feel like a lot of times there's a disconnect when it comes to occupation and ministry and money. Because there's the idea where people always misquote the scripture. They say that money is the root of all evil. No, it's not. Like money is it's just paper. It's not the root of all evil. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. Because if money was evil, then God wouldn't give us the ability to create it. And so think about what you're doing, and just because I'm not going to be a pastor, I'm not going to be a missionary, you know, that God is giving you the ability to create wealth, not because it's bad, not because it's something that is going to hurt you, but if you keep your character in Him, and we talked about in Colossians where whatever you do, if you do for God, it says that to much is given, much is required. So here's the caveat to that, is that God gives you the ability to create wealth, but He has a purpose for it. It's not so that you can go out and get a Ferrari and buy big screen TVs and hang them all in your house. You know, God wants to give you the ability to create wealth. He wants to give people that He can trust the ability to create wealth. He wants to give people the ability that are not going to let the love of money rule their character and change how they view things. And so think about it as you want to do more. Because when I was young, they would say, go to college, you know, be a doctor, be a lawyer, because you make good money. And it was like a kind of a occupational byproduct. If you do this, you're just going to make good money. So that was kind of the driving purpose for it. But what this scripture tells me is that when you do that, when you're as a doctor, that you have a bigger responsibility because people's lives are in your hand. When you're a lawyer, people's freedom is in your hand. So it's not just money doesn't just come an increase and there's no responsibility with it. So just keep that in mind too as you're going. So I want to tell you a quick story. My dad was the bus driver for Castleberry for about 12 years. And he would get up Sunday mornings and pick up kids all over Fort Worth. And I used to ride with him when I was little. And then when I got older, and he got a little bit older, he started having problems with his eyes. And he said, I don't feel comfortable driving the kids anymore. I wouldn't want to hurt somebody. And so I said, well, Dad, I'll help you out. I'll drive the bus. And he kind of chuckled at me. And I'm like, what's so funny? I want to help. You know, I got a willing heart. You know, I love the church, whatever I can do to help. And he says, well, not for nothing, but you don't know how to get around, like anywhere. You get around the corner and you get lost. She's like, plus, I don't think you have the patience to deal with a bus full of kids. And I'm like, why are you trying to talk me out of this? I just want to help. And he says, son, I want you to think about what you do and where God's put you. He said, some people are called to drive the bus. He said, other people are called to buy the bus. And I'll never forget that. And when he put it in perspective like that, I remember wasn't the bus what you guys got a few years ago? Like raising money to get the new bus that you had out here? And the bus helps you guys get from point A to point B and field trips and games. It's a resource that this school uses, you know, for outreach. And so the idea that money is bad, you know, there's a need for people to go out into the workplace, into corporate America, to get those jobs, to make that money, to have the right heart so that God can use you. It says that He gives seed to the sower. And so the more that God knows He can trust you, the more that God's going to give you. And that just to do what we're doing right now, everything requires resource, from these mics to these pianos to this beautiful building. Like, it doesn't happen for free. And so when you are involved in your occupation and you're able to be effective and generate revenue for your family as you get older, and you can give your tithes and your offerings to the church and your local community, it makes a difference. So there's the last thing that I want to share with you guys is, how many of you know what MD Anderson is? MD Anderson is a specialized hospital in Houston that tackles cancer issues. There's one here in Houston, and there's another one in New York. And so, although we have good hospitals here, MD Anderson is like the best of the best. So My mother-in-law has been battling cancer for about a year. And she's gone through the chemo, and she's gone through the surgeries, and she's gone through the radiation. And they kind of hit a wall where they felt like they had done all they could here. And so the family got together and talked, and the unanimous decision was, let's get in the car, drive to Houston, and go to MD Anderson. Because MD Anderson has the best doctors. So we get in the car, we drive to MD Anderson. Now, in Proverbs 22:29, it says, if you see a man skillful in his work, he will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. Like, why is that relevant? If you want to be effective, if you want to be able to minister to people, if you want to be able to have a platform, no matter what you do, the better you are at what you do, the more people you will come into contact with. To the point where the doctors at MD Anderson, when we went there, Denise, what do you think? I mean, it's 10,000 people a day going through that place. I mean, if you ask any pastor of any church, the hardest thing is to get new bodies through the door. This hospital has people coming from all over the world to go to see these doctors. Why? Because they have mastered their craft. They specialize in it. They're walking in their calling to help people through medicine. And God uses us as his instruments. So the doctors and the pastors and the roofers, they all have a purpose. And so I just say that because when we went down there to see all those people in that hospital and to know that they all came because of the dedication that the doctors had to learn that craft, to master that medicine, it just really opened my eyes to the idea that if I want to be able to have a platform to let my light shine for what God has for me, the better I am at what I do, the higher the likelihood that that's going to happen. So I would encourage you this morning not to be discouraged if you don't feel like you know what you want to do, or be disheartened if you feel like it's not ministry specific and like the office of missions or being a pastor. Because wherever you go in life, it's going to have to do with the core principles that you'll pick up here at school, that you can pick up at church, but it's the makeup of your character and how you walk it out that's going to make a difference. And if you know you're going to go to the workplace, do it and let people see. It's amazing when people ask about how we got to where we got, and we start sharing our testimony, Denise and I, and we say that, God opened up this door, and God allowed us to do this, and God opened up this door. And it really is, it's so impactful because most of the time that's falling on the ears of a non-believer. And so in their mind, they think that the world works one way, and to hear somebody giving God the glory for the successes that they've had professionally, it just has it's a very jarring effect. And a lot of times these are people that will never walk through a church. And so that the skills that God gives you to put you in the occupations that you are in, a lot of times is to align you to have contact and to be that light to somebody that otherwise would have never had that experience. And we think about it as, well, let's pack up and go to the other side of the world to share the gospel. And the truth is, there's people right down the street that need the same information. There's people right down the street that are looking for the same healing, the same deliverance that people halfway around the world are. And just know that God knows exactly where he wants you. So whether it's through your job, whether it's through the church, whether it's through the school that you go to, just know that who you are is going to be the most important part. And if God, Denise tells me all the time, it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. When I first met her, she always said that. It's a lifestyle, because I felt like we were always at church. Monday we had this, and Tuesday was choir practice, and Wednesday was church. And I thought that what she was meaning was that we were always going to be at church. It's a lifestyle. But what she was saying was, it's not that we're always here. It's that the way you act when you're here should be the same way you act when you're at home. It should be the same way you act when you're at the job. And that's that consistency in your life that allows God to use you. When it says, let your light shine, like your light cannot shine in a room that does not need light. For your light to truly shine, you've got to be somewhere where there's darkness. And so a lot of times where he puts us, through your jobs, through your careers, through your businesses, it's the environment that you're placed in is where you're able to use your light. And you think about it like this too. You want to be able to create an atmosphere where it's conducive for God to do what he wants to do. So when we hire employees at our trucking company, we pray before we have big meetings, or we talk about how God opens up doors for us to get big contracts. That lays the foundation where people know that is a big component of what we do. And so as you position yourself in the workplace, if you have your own business or you want to chase being an entrepreneur, just know that you'll have influence. And as you have influence, use that influence for the same thing that the pastors use their influence for. And the truth is, if you just look at the numbers, it's probably 10-1 of pastors, and a pastor's job is not to save the world. It's to equip the saints, you guys, to go out and effectively minister to other people. So I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I do know that you can be effective in what you do no matter where you are. That we had been doing what we were doing for 10 years. God put it on our heart to try to find other like-minded business owners, and we weren't sure what that was going to look like. But as we opened up the door and we said, this is what we're trying to do, we want to bridge the gap between business and ministry. That was our goal. And they just came out of the woodwork. Business after business after business. And so it's out there. Don't be concerned if you don't feel like you were called into the church. Just know that God has a place for you, and as long as you keep the same principles and the morals and the substance, it says put it on the tablets of your heart. What you learn here in this school, keep it with you, and you'll be able to effectively minister anywhere you go. So I appreciate your guys' time, and thank you so much.